Okay, what impact does religion have on the actions of the devout and political leaders today?
In regard to the Iraq War and being interviewed by BBC, if my memory doesn't fail me, he attributed his action there also in terms of divine guidance. He gets his father, I think, was much more restrained. It was a Desert Storm was a different thing. There was a sovereign border that was violated by Iraq, Kuwait, and there was restraint. We didn't go all the way to Baghdad, but his father, an Episcopalian, I'm shocked to say, as a Lutheran, that's fairly close, um, was receiving advice from his bishop, his Episcopal bishop. But at any rate, his Episcopal bishop was cautioning against that war, the line in the sand, January 15th. Well, on January 14th, it's public record that George H.W. Bush invited Billy Graham into the White House. Uh, I imagine they read scripture. I imagine they prayed, and the next day, uh, the President of the United States announced the initiative that we were going in with our military troops to intervene in Desert Storm. A year later, the former president, so that'd be 92, spoke to a large gathering of evangelical telebroadcasters, radio broadcasters, and thanked them for um, for helping him to understand Christ's will in relation to that conflict. Apparently, Billy Graham had a very explicit word from Christ to George H.W. Bush. That scares me, where religion is often not playing a very constructive role in my mind, and then going on to the Bible, and then coming back in the last third of the book to try to set down some guidelines for how the Bible can be used for peace and not war.
All these things under one umbrella, do you think it's connected politically with the original problem with Israel, Palestinians?
Well, if you go back to 1948, you had a situation which was tragic and just set up the next 100 years of conflict in that area. You had people throughout Europe, both Western and Eastern Europe, who had nowhere to go, were being killed. They got on ships, they came to Havana, they came to Miami. We did not allow one single increase in our quota of Jewish immigrants during that period. The government, as much as FDR did for good, was a government that denied there was a problem because of its isolationism and anti-Judaism. And so from that side, we had an impossible situation. Where do they go? And they go to the land of their heritage. But the land is inhabited by people that have been there a long time, that have a different religion, different customs, and a pride of land. And that set it up, and we're living with that today. And it inevitably spills over the borders into Lebanon. It does become something larger than just a regional clash. It becomes a clash between religions, or as Huntington says, it becomes a clash of civilizations. So I would say that we are dealing with a very deep-seated problem that goes back 2 millennia, and I pray to God that it won't go 2 millennia into the future.
As a theologist, could you explain to us what can be done to change the current political affairs at the moment?
The affairs of the moment are Iraq and our Palestinians and our Israelis. The problems really are focusing in that area. And we can continue our belligerency and continue to exacerbate the problem and continue to recruit for terrorists through creating desperate situations, joblessness, ill health, hunger, or we can use our enormous resources to create a situation where there can be reinitiated slow, steady progress towards resolving differences, one small city at a time. And that is the crisis that we face right now, and it's a crisis of leadership. We see that even under these present circumstances of a geopolitics where we want to assert one way, we don't want to sit down with people who differ with us. We want to impose our solution to these areas and keep the markets open for our insatiable consumerist needs in this country. We need as citizens to stand up and say that, look, even under this regime, we had a North Korean crisis. We had one very well-trained and reasonable negotiator, Hall. And we had a very frightening situation there that seems to be on its road to resolution. Let's take step number two. Let us sit down, and there are initiatives and suggestions that the United States may be able to sit down at a table with Iraqi, Syrian, and Iranian leaders. Let's start talking about the issues and try to make yet a second step. What I'm suggesting is that there's no silver bullet. We're not going to suddenly find that the Israelis and Palestinians are thrilled to live together. Camp David, the first Camp David, indicates that that is possible between an Islamic nation and Israel. So there are paradigms there, but let's just look at one small issue at a time. Let's then allow our tremendous resources to help a Palestinian state to become stable, to control its own affairs, so there will be an entity that the Israeli government can negotiate with. Let's see what Bill Clinton did. Let's look and see what Abraham Lincoln did. Let's look to some of these models Desmond Tutu did to realize there is a different way than the manner of imperialistic politics. I hate to use that term, but it's what I think is going on in our country and in our world today in the name of our country. There are people that love peace, that are dedicated to justice. It'll be an imperfect peace. It'll be another Camp David. It'll be another Oslo. But there are people in all of these countries. And it takes patient work.